Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of Fair Magic, a podcast here on YouTube. And I am your host, Levi Stevenson, joined just by my buddy, Luke Vorwald. This week, the old Casual Commander Revival team is back at it again.
I was going to say, boom, ba, ba-doo-doo, ba, ba, ba-doo-da-da.
Yeah, so Jarrett is out of town for his job this week. And Robbie is currently taking care of his extremely pregnant wife. So Luke and I are here to have some good discussion today. What was that?
Carry their weight.
Yeah, to carry their weight. Yeah, so we have an interesting topic today. It specifically centers around this idea called empathetic deck building. That's the name I gave it. It's a general idea. It's the name I gave it. Maybe there's some other better name for it, but I'm calling it empathetic deck building, which is a philosophy around which you can center your commander decks to improve your games, not only with your own friend group, but with strangers, whether it's in person, on spell table, whatever it is. So let's kind of introduce this idea for what empathetic deck building is. I kind of gave you a little preview there, but so essentially, it's a philosophy that prioritizes creating an enjoyable play experience for the entire table, especially for your opponents, and beyond just yourself. And sometimes that means setting aside certain cards, certain strategies, and essentially, and really setting aside self-satisfaction and a selfish mindset in favor of creating a deck that your group is going to enjoy playing against. Mm-hmm. So it's building decks that not only you would enjoy playing against, but that your friends or your opponents, whether you know them or not, would enjoy playing against.
Absolutely. I was going to ask you this. Do you have any examples, and I bet you do, because you could probably think of some for me, of decks that going further into playing Commander / Magic or whatever, and trying to adopt a more empathetic deck building philosophy. Are there decks from like your early days of Commander that you've kind of like put on the shelf and they don't see a lot of light?
Yeah.
Because they're not very empathetic?
A classic example of not practicing empathetic deck building is the second Commander deck I ever put together, which was a Kenrith Politics deck.
Old Kenny.
And, yeah, so I put this deck together. I was like, you know what sounds fun? Like doing voting and making people choose like random things. The idea I had set up for this was like, it is an obstacle course that my opponents have to go through to get there. And, this was literally the second Commander deck I ever built. I'd been back in Magic, because I got back in Magic, I don't know, a few months before Kamigawa Neon Dynasty came out after taking off probably, 5-6 years of playing, following it a little bit, but not playing it a whole lot. Got back into it. And I'd never made a Commander deck before. Back when I played before, I pretty much just played Standard, or just kind of like that shitty like kitchen table whatever.
Bad Legacy is what I called it.
Yes, Bad Legacy, whatever you want to call it. And I had this idea. I was like, this would be cool. And make it, let's play like Pramakan Sky Rampart, where people can only attack to their left, or we have to vote on different things, or there's tempting offers.
I still like that card.
I still have a soft spot for Pramakan, but that's the general idea. But I was also not even remotely familiar with the term stacks. And I was just like, it's just making people pay more to do things, or they just can't do certain things and they have to do this other thing. So I did not realize it, and it wasn't a stacks deck.
I'd still argue there's a difference between tax and stacks. I think
it was more tax, and it was voting and stuff like that. But like I did not know that expropriate was such an unfun card to play against.
I was gonna say,
idea.
Playing against Kenny was like ultimately it was just like waiting around for when's expropriate gonna hit. I knew it was in there. I'm like, this is the bad one, and I might as well just keep it for this one. That was wrong.
So I didn't know that expropriate, I didn't realize that expropriate was not fun to play against. Because one, I'd always been on the benefiting end of it. But two, it was just, I hadn't played with that card or against that card before. So it was just a card to me. Now realizing that, not only was exquisite, the card I was just talking about.
Expropriate. Not exquisite
expropriate,
blood.
Not exquisite blood, not exsanguinate. Expropriate. that now that I've realized that that's not a fun card to play against, and that like stack strategies are not fun to play against, and people essentially having to do a whole bunch of other things, like side things that aren't really involved with the outcome of the game, is like, it can be interesting and it can make for an interesting game, but a lot of times it just makes for just extra crap happening. It doesn't do anything. It just makes games take forever. So in the interest of, I still had some fun playing with it, but I could tell that nobody else liked playing against it. So I took it apart. I set it on the shelf for a long time, and then I just straight up took it apart, a couple years ago or something like that. And that was a lesson learned, is that, nobody liked playing against that thing, more than like once every few months.
Yeah. I think the main problem with it is that there was really just no there was no actual game plan. It was kind of just like...
No, it didn't. All it did was introduce... all it did was just introduce goofy things, and then it would win through just random accumulated value.
Yeah, it was like, maybe you'd win with Kenrith commander damage after like 20 turns.
It's just
maybe.
Stuff. Yeah, just things.
I do appreciate like the original theme of it, of like having it be voting, and also like, Kenrith is a monarch, which again, monarchy and voting don't necessarily go hand in hand, but I get, politics, whatever. And then also tax.
Well, I had the sleeves theme up, so like he was in a nice royal purple sleeve, and he was sitting on top of a deck that was ivory colored sleeve. So it was like, a Kenrith dressed in purple, dressed in royal purple, sitting on his ivory throne, things like that. So it was themed. It was nice.
Yeah, but, the theme is good. Like I said, the main problem was that one, you played some cards that get poo pooed.
Yeah, they're not fun to play against. Yeah,
and I at some point. Maybe you touched on it before, but I feel like I gotta say it. I do think that all cards have a place. Everybody's got to sign in.
That's a point I want to make. Yeah,
everyone's got to sign in on that, because I'm gonna get into some cards that I'm glad you mentioned cards that like I think are fun, because cards that I think are fun, that especially when I first started playing Commander, I loved me some extra turn spells. Still do. They're fucking great. They make me feel like a big man. But
there's an interesting point here too, as far as like some of the like you had mentioned, like what are some of the there's some decks or cards that you play that are just not fun to play against and stuff like that. The nice thing, and we'll talk about this too, is that it pairs nicely is that empathetic deck building pairs extremely well with the new bracket system, because and I want to talk about the bracket system a little bit too, because this all ties together. Because empathetic deck building is a philosophy based around a mentality, and it's a mentality of putting the enjoyment of the group over the enjoyment over the your own enjoyment, your own self-satisfaction in a deck. Now, and this empathetic deck building can also be applied to a number of different games. Like I said, it works well for friend groups, and it works for games with strangers. Obviously, when you're talking about friend groups, when you've played with your group of buddies, you figure out over time what your group likes to play, what they don't like to play, what everyone thinks is fun, what nobody thinks is fun.
Levi you love Hullbreaker horror. I know this about you. If there's one thing I've learned about you, you love some of that HH.
Yeah, I love seeing Hullbreaker horror on the
Double
field.
H.
Yeah, great card. So you figure out over time just what people find fun and what people don't find fun. And what's important about that is that group metas find different things enjoyable. Like if your group plays ultra low power casual, like really janky decks, then playing a Trouble in Pairs is probably not particularly kosher, because that card can take off a little bit. It's not a game changer anymore, which I think is probably right.
I think so.
But I think it deserves to not be a game changer, but it is a good card that can draw a lot of cards if nobody gets rid of it. That kind of card might not be kosher in a deck that's in a group that's playing super low power, even though it's not a game even though it's not a game changer.
Get it all out. Let's take a minute. We're gonna burp it all out right here. Just get it out, and then we'll be ready to go.
It is funny how like when I get to recording, I've always all of a sudden I have to burp a bunch.
Now now of all time, of all the times it could have been today. Even
so, anyways,
talking about like even with low power tables or whatever, yeah, not even just like even like a treble in pairs, but you know, an extra board wipe. Which anybody who's listened to anything I've ever said in the past how many years, I never include board wipes just because I hate them and I think it just slows down the game. But like I can, you know, I think they're appropriate. I think they're totally fine. I sacrifice things in my decks for fun synergy because I'm a degenerate like that. But like even throwing in even like a counter spell, which is like, you know, that people will always say that I'm like the dirty blue player or whatever. I think you have countered almost as many spells as me, probably. Like, you don't think so? I don't counter that much. I don't counter that much. I really don't.
No. So you are touching on an important point of this though, which is that especially if your group plays a higher level, a higher power level, you know, and you know plays a lot of, you know, bracket 3, bracket 4 type of stuff, or whatever. Not playing removal, not playing interaction is actually more harmful to that situation than adding it. So like in that case, if your group plays a higher power meta, you know, adding interaction, you know, whether it's removal or counter spells or graveyard hate or whatever it is, adding that to your deck is in itself empathetic deck building, because you are playing, now you're catering more towards what your group, you know, plays at and creates for more evenly matched games.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, so it goes either way based on what you like. When you're with a known group and what they like to play, playing to that is empathetic deck building. It's taking into consideration the rest of the group and what they want to do.
Like you know, and like I said, I'm not trying to like double back or speak out of both sides of my mouth. Like the way I normally build decks, I usually omit. I don't put single target removal or board wipes. That's just my thing. I know you have your thoughts on it. I don't do it mainly because I'd rather just do cool shit, and like if someone tries to stop me, I stop them with like countering them or making my shit whatever. That's just kind of like my style. I have zero problem with like you know, board wipes or whatever. But I bring that up as like I can see you like if someone were to take like the like a toxic version of this in one certain direction of this idea, where it's just all you ever do is play like super, I don't want to say like non-threatening, but like if you play super like just incredibly casual, I'm just play a creature. If you play incredibly fair Magic, like it's
there it is. You said the name of the show.
I know, right? But if that's what someone does, and like if they just play, if someone's making a deck where they only play things it's never gonna like piss anyone off or like stop anyone or interact, it's gonna be boring as fuck, and people aren't gonna like. There are probably some people out there who love that. There probably are. But like if I were to sit down at the game and someone just like did nothing and just kind of like handed it to me and was like didn't want to like try to like do a little back and forth, I'd be like, what are we doing here? So I'm glad that you included that. Like obviously you don't want to be super oppressive on one end of the spectrum and like where you're playing Baral.
It's about matching what the game wants. It's not just, and this is where I'm gonna bring up a point of contention on your philosophy on removal.
How dare you?
Because because while our group does not play a ton of interaction, it needs to play some because there's not a lot in there to begin with. If you then have none, then some people start taking off, and then the other part of it too is then now because you're not playing removal, everybody else has to play more removal. So it kind of leverages the play group. And I'm not like trying to call you out or anything, but like, so the lack of removal in your decks. Yeah. So the lack of removal in your decks, it offsets the leverage, and it leverages other people to play removal. So, and we know that like single target removal, generally speaking, isn't as efficient in Commander as board wipes, which is why people have gone to more board wipes, because, you know, me spending a card to sword your commander benefits the whole table, but I'm the only one that had to pay a card for it. So it's not super great, you know, but even if you're talking about playing board wipes, now someone else had to spend a card to benefit the whole table essentially, and not just themselves. So if not every deck is playing roughly the same amount of interaction, then you create an imbalance where now essentially a couple players have to babysit the table while the other two are allowed to kind of just do what they want. And as long as they can turtle up and as long as they can play, as long as they can create their pillow for it, they're insulated from all the other stuff, from the babysitting, but they're also not required to burn cards to take care of the table, if that makes sense.
That's my whole strategy. You got it. You blew it wide open.
Right. But the problem is that is not empathetic deck building. Like, I get it. I understand your thought process, but that is not empathetic deck building.
Rebuttal.
So the other part of this is that
I'm a piece of shit. I'm okay with it. I'll admit it.
The other part of this is that, like I said, part of it is you want to play cards that fit into your group's meta and that fit into the kind of games you want to play. But that does not mean that you can't experiment with different cards or different strategies to see how they fit. If one game you're like, I'm going to try something different, I'm going to try this card and see if it works, and then it doesn't, that's fine. It's okay to swing and a miss on this idea, but just learn from that. And like if you play this deck or the strategy or whatever it is and everybody has a miserable time, then you adjust and don't do that again. Mm-hmm. Like there was a time when I was playing my Mirren of Clondel Toth deck. And I had come across this loop in my deck where essentially it was Mirren on the board and Fleshbag Marauder and Plague Crafter, which Plague Crafter is just Fleshbag Marauder with the discard attached to it. And it was essentially every single turn I was looping these two creatures, and that became a huge problem because nobody else in the game could maintain a board state, because they couldn't get creatures on the board. And that, essentially I just kind of locked him out of the game for a while until I just found my infinite combo. That was miserable. So what I did was I took one of those pieces out so that I could never do that loop again. Because that's not the kind of...
took out frog. Take out the frog. That's the one that pisses me off the most. That fucking frog. Spore frog.
I did not take out Spore Frog. I would never take out Spore Frog.
I know you wouldn't. You'd be dumb to do it.
Yeah, it'd be stupid. It's a great card. But I also really just don't play Mirren much anymore.
Yeah,
it's all but out of my rotation.
That one's like your Lear. If I don't know if you'd agree with that or not, but it's like it's a powerful one that you keep on like special occasions where it's like, right, today we're gonna be dirty and nasty. I remember at one point we were thinking about because they were having the two-headed giant thing at our local comic store. And we came close to going there, and I was going to play Lear, and you were going to play Mirren, and it was going to be like real dirty and
yucky. It was going to be yucky.
I can't remember why we didn't go, but like that would have been
we went, or we didn't go because we found out that people don't really don't really go to that event anymore because a couple people had started pub stomping people. They'd found the combo that just worked, and they just started pub stomping people.
They were doing brawl.
That event doesn't exist anymore. Yeah, that event doesn't really exist anymore because the two people they were not practicing empathetic deck building, and they ruined it for everybody else.
I will say there's a little evil part of me that I do kind of want to see what happens if it was Lear and Mirren for two-headed giant. Like
I would only want to do that with our own friend group, they know full well that what's happening.
Yeah, and maybe we could do that for like Who's the Threat, or play that at some point. For I think that'd be.
We're playing two-headed giant. Yeah, we're playing two-headed giant for our.
I think if I would do two-headed giant, where I was like, we're doing mean shit.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, we're not playing every game like that, but I think every once in a while to be like, all right, we're getting fucking sweaty. I think that is kind of fun.
Yeah.
Every once in a while.
Yeah. So this kind of leads me into the next point, though, too, is that you can practice empathetic deck building with strangers as well. Now that we have this bracket system, which, yes, I guess the bracket system isn't like perfect, but the thing that's bothered me a little bit about the bracket system and specifically around is the discussion around it, is because every podcast I've listened to a number of different opinions on the bracket system and kind of how it works and what's good and what's not good about it. The main complaints I've seen is that people are unclear about they're unclear about certain things, or that it's confusing why certain cards are on the game changers list and why they're not, and where you can play certain things and when you can't. And it's frustrating to me because people are looking at they're fundamentally misunderstanding how the bracket system is meant to be approached. It is meant to be approached from the the implied or the unwritten side of it first. It's the social side of it first, and then it's the intent first. Yeah, intent, to use Gavin Verhey's language on that. The intent of is like 90% of this is how the bracket's supposed to work. The card, the game changers, and the guidelines on where you can play game changers and where you can't as far as the brackets go. That's just the final little thing where it's like, okay, I want this deck to be like, decent. I'm not trying to play CEDH or play like all of the best cards or anything like that. But I want the deck to move a little bit. It's like, so I'm somewhere in a 2 or 3 type of range. Well, I've got 2 game changers, so I can try it in 2. And if it's too powerful for a bracket 2 game, then I play it as a bracket 3. That's it. That's all there is to it. But if you say, I've got this deck put together and I've got 4 game changers in it or something like that, then you put it in a 3. If it's, okay in a 3, but not really good enough to play with other 3s, you take a couple game changers out and you drop it to a 2. That's all you got to do. Exactly. It's super easy.
It really is. And the one thing I want to piggyback on what you're saying there, like I've also listened to multiple different podcasts, YouTube channels, whatever, talking about it. It's very easy to pick up on the bans and the limitations for game changers, but also the game changers themselves, because that's like the concrete thing. Those are the quantitative, measurable, like things that and it's good. I think it's very good that they're actually giving some solid like structure versus before, which is everyone memes on it or whatever, but like Dark is a 7, 1 through 2, like obviously that was nothing. It was a big pile of nothing. This one, they're giving some hard lines, and I think it's definitely smarter for them to do what they're doing now, which is they're only giving you some, like not too much. The original game changer list was like 40, now it's at 61, and like obviously we don't want that to go like super high. The game changer, we don't want it to be like 200 cards long or whatever.
Well, yeah, you don't want it to be like where it's certain. Eventually there's enough cards in the game changer where everything's a game changer basically, and you don't want to get to that point.
Exactly. But all that to say, like they're giving some actual hard, like these are cards on a list and they count for a thing. It's the quantitative like things you can latch onto. It's easier to talk about those than it is about like intent, but like people often forget about that shit, because not only is there the list of cards that are on the game changer list, the ban list, or and then there's the rules for game changers in brackets, but they all often ignore like because I believe it's also in like some infographic or in some write-up, maybe the original write-up of the thing, but like each bracket kind of also comes along with like, well, in this one, like you're really not supposed to combo. Like if you're playing in this one, you should not expect any infinite combos at all at any point. In number 2,
right,
like,
and then this one's like maybe only late in the game.
Yeah, maybe late in the game, and it takes like 3 or 4 cards. In 3, it's like I do think it's a little wishy-washy, and I kind of want them to tighten up on a couple of things. Like I know that they mentioned tutors in some of the bracket system of like, oh, there should be little to few tutors in like this bracket or whatever. But then they have certain tutors that are on the game changer list. It's a little.
To me, if you're trying to split hairs between what's a few tutors and what's not, you're probably playing too many tutors. Like if you're saying, well, is 3 a few tutors or is 4 a few tutors, whatever. If you're trying to split hairs, then you're not abiding by the spirit of this bracket system.
No, and I'm not saying that. I agree with you. I'm more saying like it's confusing to me why they have tutors on the game changer list, but then they also mention tutors like within the intent of each bracket. Like I would rather than just be
because they can't put every single tutor on the game changer list. Like Cultivate is not a game changer, but it is a tutor.
No. Well, I mean, but
Cultivate.
What about like Diabolic Tutor? Like, no one gives a shit if someone plays Diabolic Tutor, but like Vampiric Tutor, Demonic Tutor, like people.
Right. But that's why Diabolic Tutor is not a game changer, and Vampiric Tutor is.
Yeah. I suppose you're right.
That's why, because 4 mana tutors are demonstrably worse than 1 mana tutors or 2 mana tutors. So that's why or whatever, and that's why they say it's fine to play a Diabolic Tutor in bracket 2, but if you're playing a bunch of like artifact tutors in an Urza deck or something like that, then you're trying to play a higher level game of Magic, even though those are not specifically on the game changers because they are not so generically powerful that they overpower any game they're in.
No, that's fair.
So that's the difference. And that's what I'm saying is like if you're trying to split hairs between what's a few and is it 3, is it 4, is it 5, whatever it is, then you're missing the point. the entire point is intent. So that way you're figuring out, am I playing a bunch of different tutors? They're not on the game changers list, but am I playing a bunch of tutors to be able to make my deck super consistent and to be able to fish up anything I want? If so, then play it in bracket 3. Mm-hmm. If you're trying to just, not play game changer tutors, but then just play as many tutors as possible and then play it down in a 2, then you are actively engaging in what is called pub stomping. In that case, you are the bolas, because you are knowingly playing your deck down a bracket because of a technicality, mm-hmm. which is, like I said, it violates this entire philosophy of empathetic deck building, which is, it's building for what you're supposed to be building for. And that's why I think, when it comes to playing with play groups of strangers, the bracket system is helpful because there is a general expectation of what this game should look like in each bracket. And if you're just kind of goofing around, it's a bracket 1. That's what it is, regardless of kind of like what's in it, short of game changers, regardless of what's in it. If you're just like goofing around and you might win 20% of the time, that's a bracket 1 deck or whatever. But if you've got some good engine pieces, some really good synergy and stuff like that, not, only 1 or 2 game changers, but you've got some really good synergy, that's clearly a bracket 3. Or let's say you have no game changers in it, but it's like got really good synergy. It's clearly a bracket 3. My Esper Zombies deck is a great example of this. There are 0 game changers in it, not a 1. There isn't even a Soul Ring in that deck. But I will only play it in bracket 3 games because I know that Zombies deck can keep up in a bracket. It deserves to be in bracket 3.
Absolutely.
So, that's why you can't, it's not about trying to angle shoot the rules. If you're trying to angle shoot the rules and look for little technicalities on where to play a bracket, you are missing the point. Mm-hmm. So that's where empathetic deck building comes into play here, is that you're building this with the intent of being and really truly playing in the bracket it's supposed to be playing in. And again, it's okay if you think, I think this is a bracket 2, you play down, and let's say you accidentally just kind of blow out the group because it turns out your deck's better than you thought it was going to be. That's okay. Just next time, play it as a bracket 3. Mm-hmm. And will that, if you're playing it as a stranger in a group of strangers and you think it's a bracket 2 and it just accidentally blows up the table, and one of the strangers gets really, really upset about it because they think you pub stomped, and you explain that I genuinely have never played this deck before and I did not think it was this good or whatever. Can you fix that and change their mind? I don't know. Probably not. But
yeah, and I was going to bring that up with what you're talking about here too. Not only I think it's a very good idea to have the mentality of empathetic deck building. It's also important, and this is just general life, just empathy in general, I guess you could say it, of just especially if you're just going to go play Magic, I know a lot of people will say this, and I know this isn't, there's not a lot of juice out of this lemon to squeeze as far as the conversation goes, but alongside with trying to be conscious of how you build your deck, also just trying to be conscious of when you're playing with someone, sometimes shit just happens. And you said, someone they just build a deck and it popped off real quick. I think there have been times when I have played, and both you and I have played in games together where someone else was there and straight up I do believe they were lying. And you can't stop that. They say this all the time when they're talking about the game changers. You can't stop bad actors. That's just, it's not. Yeah, there's
if someone is going into a game with bad intentions and going in explicitly just not giving a shit about what happens in that game as long as they win, there is literally nothing you can do to stop that.
You can't do anything about it. Their existence is more sad because that's apparently what they got to do. But but even alongside of that though, sometimes not only let's say you play your commander, I don't know, you're in bracket 2 or 3 where a counter spell or 2 is certainly not unheard of, and you get your commander countered and you got to sit around for a bit. It sucks. Don't get me wrong. It's not fun. It's happened to me, and you not only do you have to adjust in the example of someone kind of popping off way more than they thought they were going to, or even just certain, because I know there's certain mechanics in the game where everybody gets a little bit triggered on, and for me, it's board wipes. I understand they're necessary, blah, 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 blah. But for me, those are my little bugaboos. Someone might have a bugaboo of counter spells or whatever. Targeted removal, all the classics. And I think sometimes not only should you practice empathetic deck building, but also just don't get so pissed when you don't need to be, because it is a nerd
in the end, no matter what, it is a game.
Exactly.
That's all it is.
I love the empathetic deck building philosophy. I want it to be like also adopted to people who are just playing the game in general, as far as conversation.
Well,
goes.
yeah, and it's not just deck building, but it's also deck piloting. So it's an entirely all encompassing strategy. Is like, just because you can farewell doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
It's one. I am a staunch defender of farewell. I believe it is a useful card that does not need to be unfun. Lots of people play it unfun because they use it in a way as a catch-up card versus a win the game card. And that's where you get the problem there. And that is an empathetic thing, is understanding when you're just doing it and it's just extending the game a lot, or unnecessarily dragging this game out, or if it is, I'm going to use this and try to win the game sooner. So it goes either way, and that can go for a lot of different cards too. But part of the reason I wanted to kind of get this idea of this philosophy out there too is just like Commander is such a such a complex format, and it's the only format that we have where the social aspect is such a big part of it. When you're playing, even when you're playing standard or modern or even like Canlander where it's just one-on-one, I'm just trying to win the game. That is literally it. Do not care what your feelings are. Don't care if you hate this deck. Doesn't matter. We are both trying to win this game, and it could not possibly matter what the experience is like. Commander is unique in that it has the social element involved. So in that, because it is unique to have that element involved in the gameplay, you have to take a unique approach to building the deck, short of CEDH. Obviously, CDH and then bracket 4, really, because both of those brackets are, we're playing whatever, doesn't matter. We can play the most miserable decks you can think of because we're playing in 4, and that's what it is. So empathetic deck building really only applies for brackets 3 and down. But that's where I would guess that's probably where 80% of games take place, is in those 3 brackets.
At least.
And really just the middle, 2 and 3.
Yeah. There's not a whole lot of 1 out there. Do you think you even have any 1s? Out of curiosity.
The only deck, yes, I do. I do have a 1, and it is my 4s deck.
Yeah, Council of 4.
It's my 4s deck. Yeah, my Council of 4s deck. That is the only one.
And that one's probably a 1 because there's really nothing. There's really no like plan other than just like.
There's no real synergy to it. It just kind of does stuff.
The only you can see it here. My Sab Suban. Is it Sab? I always forget her name. I always call her Frog.
Sab Suban. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, that one might be a 1, but it's also like a fairly functional +1/+1 counter.
No, that's a Simic value engine. That's a 2 at minimum.
Yeah, it honestly might be, because the idea was that everyone and all the art, everyone's thick in it, but it's still like it's got the power of Simic. It's still
Simic value engine. It's
still
a 2.
Simic.
Yeah. So, but the important part to remember about this entire idea, though, is that like it's not every single game has to be fun for every single person. That is just not possible. There is way too much variance in Commander to make that possible. And like we said before, there's nothing you can do to stop bad actors in this situation, where it's like if someone's just coming in to be a shithead, they're gonna do it, and there's really not a lot you can do about it besides like if you can see that they're gonna do that, just bouncing.
Yeah.
That's really the only thing you can do. But what you can do is not be the problem, not be a part of the problem. This is being the type of player that you would want to play with. Like that's the thing, is it like that's the whole idea is be the kind of player and the kind of deck builder that you would want to play against. So it's not about trying to make every single game as awesome for everybody. It's just not possible. If someone just gets land screwed, there's not going to be a lot you can do to help fix that problem, make that game fun for them. There's just not a lot to it.
Exactly, it happens.
But I do want to go over a few things that empathetic deck building is not. So, empathetic deck building is not an excuse, or it's not an excuse to not have a win con in your deck. It is not saying you cannot win the deck. In fact, it mostly goes the other direction.
Oh, dude, I'm very glad I didn't think about that at all, but I'm glad you brought that up. Like that's what speaking of bugaboos, like I brought up before, someone who just fucking like just no plan, dick in the wind, just
does
going
stuff.
Like,
I've made my annoyances with those. I've made my annoyances with the timey-wimey Doctor Who precon well public at this point, where that the deck just does stuff, and it takes 15-minute turns, and that's all it does.
Yeah,
That's all the deck does. Is take huge turns. Hate it. Sucks. And like even if you get good at playing it, still sucks. It takes forever. So putting a win con in your deck in a way to actually finish the game out is in itself empathetic deck building. Now, depending on your power level, how exactly you accomplish that matters. Yeah. But there's sometimes when there's some games where everybody is trying not to be the guy that they want so desperately to not be accused of pub stomping that they just won't win the game. Everyone will just sit there and do stuff without actually like advancing the board state. And that sucks.
Yeah, I mentioned it on an old episode of CCR back in the day, but I'll mention it again. There was, and I'm not gonna, heaven forbid anyone ever hears me talking shit about someone, but there was a rather well known gameplay channel. I was watching it one time, and there's one of the participants in that game where they said like, oh, they could have like stopped a thing or whatever, but they chose not to because like it just felt wrong. And I'm like, well, I can almost understand that in certain circumstances of like, let's say you didn't cast that farewell because all it was going to do was going to make the game last like an extra hour. Sure, but it sounds like you could have like probably won. Or I think that their big reasoning was like, oh, they did this big fun thing, and I just let them have that. And I'm like, if that's your choice, I get it, but like they really put on like an air of like, oh, aren't I a saint? It's like no, you kind of
they're the martyr because they didn't cast the spell that could have ended the game.
You kind of just made a farce out of the whole thing. Like you kind of wasted everyone's fucking time, in my opinion. Like it
right. And there's a gap between I'm not going to cast this because I don't want to take somebody out of the game an hour early, type of thing. Like I don't want to make somebody sit there for an hour because I just smoked them out of the game right away. There's a wide gap between that and I'm just not going to cast this thing that could end the game sooner because I just don't want to do something or whatever. Because I don't want to be.
Aren't I such a good guy?
Yeah, aren't I such a good guy by letting everything just pop off and whatever? It's like probably not.
No, and if anything, you're just wasting people's fucking time, in my opinion.
You're just wasting time. Now,
maybe there's some people who disagree, but like I think that's like the biggest like it just blows. Like, what are we doing here, right? Like, what's the point?
And I'll even be the first to say that like. I'm not the kind of person that is like, let's get this game over with. Let's get this game over with. I am not that kind of person. Like if we're playing a 2.5 hour game of Magic and there's like stuff happening all the time, I'm good with that. That in my mind, that is peak Magic. That is as good as it gets right there. When you're playing like a 2 hour game, but things are happening all the time. Yeah. It's fantastic. Magic doesn't get a lot better than that for me. I don't care if I'm playing one game every hour, one game every half hour, or if I'm playing one game in 2 hours, as long as things are happening, I don't care. Like I don't need the game to be over, that's always been a funny thing to me. Is like everyone like trying to get this game over. It's like I'm
a little bit like that.
I don't understand the mentality of like I love this game, but I want to play less of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll defend that real quick. And here's my mentality on it because I am a little bit like that. The issue with that is like I've played enough Commander. Again, exclusively Commander, which is all I ever play nowadays.
Sure.
I played enough of it where, like, I know that, like, in theory, and I certainly agree with you, if there's a 2 hour game where it's engaging and shit's actually happening, it's fucking awesome. But, like, I know that if we risk another extra hour on this game, like, someone just fires off a farewell with no, that's an easy example. But, like, if I, like, let's say you came to me with a deal and said, all right, Luke, this game is going to go in for an extra hour, but you don't know the quality of the game, but it's been pretty good up to this point. Would you rather like roll the dice and hope that you get another extra hour of like good gameplay, or is it just going to like turn into a gigantic slog?
Well, yeah,
a lot of the time it kind of just sucks.
So I'm not in favor of like intentionally extending the game just to extend the game.
Yeah.
But like I playing long games does not bother me. I don't care about playing long games.
Yeah, again, to sum up my long-winded thing of what I was saying, for me, the longer the game goes on, the more you risk of like having it become boring and stale.
Potentially.
I would much rather like if I could cash out on like a tight hour and a half game where shit was good and actually happening, and like, again, if I could guarantee that like the 2.5 hour game is going to be fun and engaging, then hell yeah, let's do it all night long. But like, there's no way to guarantee that. So I'm
not saying anyone should like intentionally extend games. That's not what I'm saying.
No, I know you're not. Just for me, I can confidently say the majority of 2-hour-long games I've been a part of, the last half of that game is not nearly as fun as the first half. People aren't joking. People are getting pissy or upset. We're just not. It's just not as fun. And like,
it just depends on what's happening. It depends on what the board state looks like. So the last part of this last kind of misconception about empathetic deck building that I wanted to get. So there's one specific point I wanted to bring up, is that group hug. Group hug sounds like a strategy that is empathetic. It helps other people draw cards. It helps people do things. It makes the game do more things. It creates an incubator for more stuff. However, that does not make it an empathetic strategy, and often is the opposite of that. Because now everybody is resource rich in a deck that maybe is not designed to run resource rich, but as soon as it has a lot of resources, then it is an overpowering. It is an overpowering deck because it's running so heavy on resources that it ordinarily doesn't have.
Oh yeah.
There is a specific example of this game that I want to talk about. That is a perfect example of this. So, a couple years ago, when March of the Machine came out, I bought a box, and I bought just a draft booster box. And when I opened that box, I opened like 8 Praetors, like 8 unique Praetors in that one box alone. Like all of the Shieldrids, all of the Elishnorans, like everybody.
Praetors,
I think I only needed to buy like 1 or 2 of them. So I was like, I'm just gonna make a Praetors deck. I'm gonna put Morophon at the helm, because I want to just do whatever I wanted. I put Realmbreaker, I put the World Tree. I just did all sorts of weird, fun stuff. You know, with ideally where you get Realmbreaker on the field and then you pop the 10-mana ability and just poop out all your Praetors on the field. Well, I played it in a game, and it wasn't like an especially powerful deck. I mean, once you get Praetors on the board, like it is gonna be good, but like it takes a lot for that deck to get Praetors on the board, because I got to draw lots of cards. I got to get lots of land on the field. It's like it's a long build up to get to my overwhelming board state. I played it in a game, and another friend of ours, there was a couple other decks. I can't remember what else everyone else was playing, but specifically one of our other friends was playing Group Hug, and I think he was playing the Big Gay Kings, Kinos and Tyrannos, or whatever it is, the Big Gay Kings. So he was playing Group Hug. Well, when you have a 5-colored deck that is not used to having a ton of card draw or a ton of ramp, and all of a sudden you give that thing nitrous, and all of a sudden it's drawing 3 cards a turn, it's casting sorceries to go fetch more lands, it's doing all sorts of stuff, and all of a sudden that deck starts spinning out of control really fast, because then you get Realmbreaker on the field and you've already got 9 lands. Next turn you're playing for 10 land. You're playing your 10th land because it's already in your hand because you drew it, and then you're popping that. And then all of a sudden, here comes all of the Praetors. Every single one of them. All 15 Praetors on the board at the same time. And then, obviously, I won that game. Because I think pretty much at that point, I think everyone just scooped, basically. They're like, well, this game's over. One of our friends was very upset with me. Extremely upset. Because he thought, it's like, well, you're playing Praetors. That deck's really good. Like, it's overpowered and all this or whatever. And I was like, dude, we were playing with Group Hug, and all of a sudden, this deck that needs tons of resources to do like the thing had him in an instant, because it was drawing 3, 4, 5 cards a turn or something like that. Something crazy. I don't know what to tell you, man, or whatever. But like, that's just what happened. However, after that experience, I was like, well, I either need to never play this thing with Group Hug, or it's got to be a high power Group Hug deck. But then I realized too, is like, I've played it in other games, and I popped Realmbreaker's 10-mana ability like multiple times. I don't know why. For some reason, the decks I build, when it's got like these weird like little side quests it can do, for some reason do well. Like when I had this old like Urza Artifacts deck with the Meld Urza, for some reason, like almost every time I played that deck, I was able to both make the Mech Titan and Meld Urza, like in the same game. Almost every time I played that. I won almost never, but for whatever reason, I was able to do that like in every game I played. But anyways.
Or actually, real quick, while I run what was the one, the Djinn or the Genie or whatever, that if you flip 5 coins in a row, you get to cast all your shit for free? Like the first game.
I had a Nero Wild Mage deck.
No, was it Mira?
Yeah.
Was it Mira?
It wasn't. It was the near a deck, but it wasn't near a herself.
Yeah.
It was. I can't remember what you have to flip 5 coins, and if you do that, you can cast something from your hand or whatever for free or whatever it was. And the first time I ever did it, just bang, 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 five called coin flips in a row, and just did it.
That was so crazy.
So it's just sometimes I'm the beneficiary of dumb luck like that.
Sometimes shit just happens.
After that game, though, after that group hug fire, the group hug Praetor nonsense, after that, I took that deck apart and I sold all the Praetors, which made a nice little profit for me. Great. But I realized that at that point, like, that deck, it's either going to do nothing because it's too slow, or it's going to do its thing and do way too much and just blast the table. Yeah. So there was not enough of it wasn't consistent enough, but when it went off, it would completely overpower any deck that it was like really scaled with. So it either sucked or it won handily. So I took it out because it was fun for me to try to build up to that, but it almost invariably created negative games because either I wasn't doing anything and I was like creating kind of an imbalanced board state that was kind of favoring somebody because either I wasn't swinging or I didn't have creatures to block, so they were getting free attacks on me, or whatever it was. Or I put 15 Praetors on the board and everyone else is having a terrible time. So there was not a game to be had with that deck that the other 3 people in the group were having fun. So I took it apart. I sold all the valuable pieces. That deck is no more because it just wasn't fun for everybody else. So group hug was really the true perpetrator. It was the real big bad in that scenario because it was the big bad in that individual game, which helped me realize that deck that I had built was a problem, because before, it was kind of a lucky thing if I got it to pop off, whatever. Most of the times it just kind of did a few things and it sputtered out and then ran out of whatever it was trying to do. So I hadn't really considered the fact that it was a really weird, because it was a deck that basically was impossible to match up. But Group Hug made that particular game miserable, but then it also made me realize that deck was just not a good fit for basically any play group unless I powered it up with Ristic Studies and all these just to truly gas it up. And I didn't really want to do that. I didn't. That's not the kind of deck that I want to play. So I just took it apart because that wasn't gonna work it wasn't gonna work with anything in our friend group, and I didn't want to like unleash that on some unsuspecting stranger.
Exactly.
So
I will say, as far as like Group Hug goes, like that's one of those where a lot of the times I will enjoy playing against it because I just reap the benefits of it, and like even if I don't win, it's like I was like playing like on speed the whole time. But that's a style of deck I've never wanted to build myself. I've never like thought about like
I don't want to play it.
I mean, I kind of don't get the point. Like, I mean, at least with Jim, you're talking about Big Gay Kings and his like. And I've seen him win with that one at least. One just because Jim's just an incredibly fun person to play with. But I haven't played with him in so long. I miss that guy. But like, I've seen him win with it where like people just deck themselves out because of what is it? Is it Forced Fruition where anytime you cast a spell, the player has to draw like 7 cards or something?
They draw 7 cards.
So I mean,
there are lots of group hug decks that don't have a way to win.
Yeah, exactly. I don't get the like. What do you do? Like, I don't really get it. Super quick story from MagicCon Chicago. The only game that I won all weekend was against it was the same kid that like captain like when it was like some kid like his first weekend playing Magic like ever. He's like some like 19-year-old that captain just like smoked. Anyway, he was the same kid that was in this pod, and then someone else was playing Group Hug. And of course, it was like towards the end of the con, and I'm like, man, I gotta win like one game. Like, can I have one game where I actually do something and feel good about myself? So I played Kian, which of course, when I drew 1 billion cards and I had Kian on the field, I'm like, well, I destroyed them. It was it was like Anakin slicing down the younglings. I'm like, I'm out here to hurt. And I came out and I'm like, all right, guys, this is what I got. This is what I'm working with. It is fairly powerful. What do you guys got? Oh, I'll put my Group Hug. I'm like, if you're sure. And then I proceeded to just fucking spanked him. And Yeah. So all I have to say, group hug.
If you were abiding by empathetic deck building philosophy, you would have said, this deck is too much when it gets the benefit of group hug. I'm going to play something else.
Yeah, but I wanted it. I wanted that sweet dub.
I wanted to feel something.
I wanted to feel like a big man.
And I'm understanding I am sympathetic to that mindset. I truly am. Like, just having the one time where you can just spout off and just spank.
And to be fair,
I'm sympathetic to that mindset.
For the record, I did say, hey, here's what this deck does. Here's the commander. I draw cards and I deal commander damage.
Yeah.
And this guy's like, oh, do group hug. And I'm like, if you're sure,
okay.
I didn't like snowball him or do any tricky shit. It's like, hey, if you want to play group hug,
sure,
like,
you weren't pub stomping.
Yeah, and maybe this guy's group hug deck like wasn't having a good showing or something, because like all it literally did was make everyone else do shit. And I'm like, are you gonna benefit from this in any way, shape, or form? No, you're just letting us all have free shit. I'm like, all right. Anyway.
Yeah. So anyways, the reason is that essentially because that creates an imbalanced game where somebody is going to take off that ordinarily would not take off because they've got all this extra stuff, and it creates a weird play experience. Sometimes it's fun if you got a few sickos in the group, but a lot of times if it's strangers, they don't really like that because someone's just gonna blast off when they ordinarily shouldn't be able to. And that, it goes back to like, where we just kind of said no turn one soul rings on who's the threat, because we don't want people to just go and just take off. It doesn't make for a very fun game to play. It doesn't make for a very fun game to watch. So we just got rid of that. I still am campaigning that we just don't put soul rings in decks personally, but I don't think that. I don't know if I'm gonna have the voting power in that one in the group to pass that one. But it's like I said, in the end, empathetic deck building and deck piloting, it's not about powering down every game. It's not about not playing high power games. It's not about not playing ristically. That's not at all what this is. What it is building your deck with a mindset to fit into a certain type of game and to play it in that type of game in a way where you're going to have an even matchup and you're going to try to remove as much misery as possible from the game. Trying to make it as fun as you can possibly contribute to the game of Commander. And I know this sounds like a lot to think about. Like it's like, now I have to be, I'm not trying to. This isn't the now I've got to like prioritize everybody else over myself and stuff like that. Like it's not the hocus, the hokey like I've got to care about everybody else's feelings and and spending all of my mental energy doing all that stuff. It's not what that is. I mean, you should care about what other people think, and you should care about other people's feelings and stuff like that. I mean, you should care about that a little bit.
At least a little bit.
You should care about that a little bit. But what it is though is by following this, not only are you making the game better for the people that you're playing with, but by proxy, you're also making it more enjoyable for yourself, because there'll be plenty of times where your own deck building choices are going to factor in to your own. This sounds very like, duh, but the cards you put in this deck is also going to affect your own play experience along with everybody else. So So if you incidentally play something and it creates a really, really unbalanced board state or an unbalanced gameplay style, there's a 75% chance that you are the one that's getting screwed out of that. So you can improve your own experiences by improving everybody else's. Because in the end, if you're playing Commander and you're not playing CEDH or Bracket 4 or something like that, you are playing to have fun. You're playing to have a fun game and also try to win. Not I'm trying to win the game, and then if I have fun, great. If I don't, whatever. Yeah. That's
fun should be
it's two different mindsets.
Fun should be prio number one. Winning is cool when it happens, and you like. In order to make the game fun, you should be
for 1 through 3. For 1 through 3.
Yeah, true. Yes.
In brackets 4 and 5, that's completely out of this. That's a different discussion entirely, because that is all they're trying to do is win. They don't care how they do it.
Exactly. Yeah. Fun should be prio number 1 in 1 through 3. Absolutely.
Yeah, and the other part of this is that the other misconception about this would be that stacks is not allowed. That is not true. Especially tax, I think is definitely allowed. Yeah. Tax and stacks are in my mind, are two completely different things.
I would agree.
But even Stacks isn't necessarily a bracket 4 strategy. It's not necessarily a strategy that is, unempathetic, but you have to be smart about it. Is that if you're going to make a stacks deck, you have to say, all right, everybody, there's no game changers in here, but this is stacks. I'm just telling you right now, this is a stacks deck. So if someone doesn't understand that, explain it to them what it is so that everybody knows exactly what kind of experience they're signing up to play for. Being honest in your decks in evaluating your own deck and honestly representing your deck in a pregame conversation is also a huge part of this, because I can build a bracket 3 deck with no game changers and just pass it off as a bracket 2. It's like, yeah, there's no game changers. Okay, so they're not going to think the stranger that's never played this deck isn't going to be any wiser to the fact that your deck is way better than theirs, even though you have no game changers in it, just like they do. So it's honestly representing your deck and honestly building it to fit a certain bracket, whatever bracket you're trying to fit it into. Mm-hmm. It's about being honest with yourself and with the people around you. So I know it sounds like a really simple concept, but there are a lot of people that don't that's not how they approach what they're doing. Or they don't know that they should take that into account. And it's a strange thing, because sometimes you don't know that your deck that you built is a huge problem or it's really unfun to play with until you play with it once. But then if you figure out that the rest of the group was miserable because you played this deck or this card or whatever it is, and if you continue to play that or whatever and say, oh, and there's a pattern of it making people miserable, you need to adjust to that. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, now you're being a dick.
One thing that I really used to like a lot, because I believe this is no longer a thing, unfortunately, when you would do communal brewing with Jason with EDH Rec. That's no longer, that's kind of gone, but right. It's gone the way of the buffalo, unfortunately, which it is a shame, because I tuned in every week that I could, because you guys were genuinely entertaining. But one thing that you guys would do a lot is you would, a lot of times you throw a card in there just because hey, this is just a fun card. We're making a $50 budget deck. This is just a fun card. We're throwing it in there. It's not even ultra synergistic with the deck. But I mean, oftentimes it would be, because you guys know how to build a deck rather well. But I know Assault Suit was one that you guys would throw in at any opportunity, which for me, that's one of my ultimate favorite cards. I was gonna say, is there any cards that you can think off the top of your head that that are just a fun card that you throw in there because you think it's going to be fun for everybody involved? Assault Suit is one of them. And I know there might be...
That's going to be fun for everybody involved?
Yeah, because I know there's some people who might be maybe they have qualms with Assault Suit, maybe, I guess. But I think that's one of those cards where it's hey, game's got to fucking end at someone's got to take damage at some point. Assault Suit's fucking funny. I love Assault Suit.
So here's one. Now Feshni. Now Feshni is one that you put in there because it's funny.
Yeah.
Because it has a powerful effect, but it also costs 6 mana to put on the board to begin with. So whatever you're going to copy with Nelfeshni is probably big and goofy and stupid.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back specifically to last year at my bachelor party when I was playing my Pet Mechanics deck that has Nelfeshni in it, and we discovered the wackiest interaction of all time, which is casting Stolen Identity to make a copy of Nelfeshni and then ciphering it onto the first one that can swing. And then connecting with it and casting it and copying it again to make 4 Nelfeshnis. And then casting Call Forth the Tempest to discover 10 8 times or whatever it was.
Somehow you didn't.
We found out that is maybe the.
I don't know how you didn't.
No, I didn't. I didn't win. I didn't win that turn. I don't even know if I won the game, no, but I did. But what I did win was All-Star Play of the Weekend with that. So there's a few different cards that are just kind of interesting to add to the game. I think Bounty of the Luxa, which is a very mid card, a very mid whatever card. It's one of my favorite cards of all time. You can put it in any Simic deck, and it just kind of works, or any deck that has blue and green, I should say. Nobody protests it. Nobody's like, oh, this is overpowered or whatever. It's just good. It's just fun. It's nice little value.
Real quick, back to
rabble rousing. Rabble rousing, I think, makes games more fun.
I do got to give special mention with Nelfeshni with the big natties. Big natty Nelfeshni. We gotta acknowledge those. I don't know why they have those.
In our Baldur's Gate playthrough, we will find Nelfeshni.
They had some some big swingers on those things. I don't know if they all do or not, but
Yeah.
on the art for the Magic card, there's a lot there to look
Yeah.
at.
Yeah.
But speaking of red, one card that I think is actually really good, as far as like a fun group, like fun card would be Descent into Avernus. That one's just it gives everybody a little bit of gas.
Yeah,
and I understand.
I think Monarch is a great great like thing in general to introduce to a game that just makes the game more fun. People are more inclined to swing.
Yeah, for sure.
It helps. It rewards you for swinging.
I think
Monarch is a great mechanic to add to any game. Monarch is great.
That's aside from Descent, because Descent doesn't do Monarch stuff, right?
No, I know. Okay, I just was just contributing to the fun cards.
Do you know what that card does? But yeah, that's one that I think is the Descent into Avernus one, because I mean it's kind of go back to the point of what you said before, where certain decks when they get extra gas, it's kind of not fun, but like it's not giving like egregious amounts, and it's a burn up and a build up for everybody at the same time. I'm trying to think of any other cards. I was gonna say Triskaidekaphile, but I know you're gonna really disagree with that one. I think that one's just funny.
So
this comes down to preference and what we think is funny. Because
I think all win cons are a fascinating part of this discussion, because if your group appreciates alt win cons, go for it. Play them to your heart desire. If your group decidedly does not like alt win cons,
what Neanderthals.
You gotta be careful with how you do.
You really do.
Because there are some alt win cons that are just generally kind of fun or whatever. Like, I've never heard of anybody that cares about what's the damn Helix Pinnacle? I've never heard of anybody that like protests Helix Pinnacle or something like that. Yeah, it's just kind of funny or whatever it is. But like Thassa's Oracle or something, which is not a game changer.
Is it not? Are you sure? I'm pretty.
Is Thassa's Oracle a game changer?
I could have sworn Thassa's Oracle's a game changer. You might want to look that up real quick, because I think it is.
I'm gonna look it up.
Do. While you're looking that up, there are certain ones that are certainly like easy baby shit mode to pull off. That one you could also argue Approach the Second Sun. One like
Thassa's Oracle.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's definitely on the game changer list. Yeah, no, there's certainly ones where it's like, okay, like you kind of roll your eyes at that one for sure. I'm we've mentioned it before. I'll spend like maybe 20 seconds on it. I'm in the same camp as you, because you would defend Dockside Extortionist of like, depending on your power level, like it scales. I think Thassa's Oracle is the same way actually, but regardless.
Well, but even if they unban Dockside, it would go straight to the game changer, which I don't think they will unban Dockside.
Not now.
I don't think they should. I don't think they should. Yeah, not now. You can't unban it, and then you shouldn't unban Mana Crypt either.
No. If we're talking about like fun, if we're just talking about fun alt win cons, I think like 20-toed Toad goes in there. That one's like you got to go through some hoops for 20-toed Toad. I'm not. I can't even remember the last time I won with an alt win con, because I love them. I've mentioned it many times. I think they're really fun. I can't remember. The last time I think
stuff like Lab Man and Revel in Riches and stuff like that. Yeah, those where it's just like you just win. They're like, it's so easy to get them.
Those are easy.
Those are the ones that really. Those are the ones I don't like. And those are the ones I think a lot of people don't generally like.
I would agree, because it's just easier to deck yourself than like it's easier to deck yourself than like you originally think. Like it's not. It's not
easy. Oh yeah. There's tons of ways to do it. So the alt win cons, you gotta be, I would not just take alt win cons into a game with strangers and not I would make sure that I disclose that there's alt win cons in the deck. Even if it's just like one of them, even if it's just one alt win con in the whole deck, if it's in there, you need to disclose that.
I fully agree.
Not because it's necessarily overly powerful, but it's because this ends the game in a way that many people find very unsatisfying.
You got to set the expectation for sure. I think that the ones that I do include in a lot of my decks, and I don't even know if I've won with them ever. I do like Simic Ascendancy, and one of the reasons why I like Simic Ascendancy a lot is because not only does it have the clause of winning the game, but also it's got that little bit in there where you can put a +1/+1 counter on there. So like if you just need something if you need like, I need to put this +1/+1 trigger so it can trigger my other shit or whatever, it gives you something to do. as well. You know, like it's a little outlet for you get some extra mana to
Sure.
burn. Like, ah, fuck, we'll do that or whatever. What was the other one I was gonna say? Oh, another one that it's the main win con for what's his name, Zur, the new Zur, and I honestly don't even know if I've ever, maybe once I won with it, but it's Test of Endurance. It's actually, that one's kind of hard to pull off. But yeah, I mean, there's certain ones that are like not fun, certain ones that are certainly easier. But as an alt win con enjoyer, I do think that you should, before you play, like, hey, this one, if you're cool with it, I tried to win.
You should immediately disclose it.
Always disclose. Always. Absolutely.
Yep. I 100%. You have to disclose those. You know, I hope that like my explanation of this philosophy of empathetic deck building wasn't too long-winded or wasn't too winding of a road. But I mean, in the end, there's a good chance you're already practicing it to a certain extent. But what it really is an idea that if there's a card that you're throwing in just to make yourself happy, even though you know it's going to make everybody else miserable, maybe think twice about it. You know, that's not saying you can never play Expropriate or Farewell or Drannith Magistrate or something like that. It's not saying you can never play those cards, but it is, you know, if you're going to put it in there, then you need to make an honest evaluation of your own deck so that you know where it fits and you can be honest with yourself and you can more properly play games where that deck belongs. And it's being honest with the people that you're playing with and just saying, you know, instead of saying, oh, it's why it's got like a couple stacks pieces or whatever, but not too much or whatever. Playing Drannith Magistrate is a great, and without like explicitly saying I'm playing Drannith Magistrate is going to piss some people off. Yeah. It's going to piss a lot of people off. Yeah. That could like, that's on my Mount Rushmore of cards that I really, really hate playing against, along with Hullbreaker Horror.
Yeah, no, I also hate Drannith Magistrate. There's been a few times, and I'm like, oh, fuck, that sucks. Brutal. Yeah.
So it's one of those things.
Yeah, I do.
In the end, it's about being honest and you know, thinking of other people's experiences, you know, along with your own. I know that there's a lot of things in like social discourse and things that kind of, I think in my personal, you know, we don't need to go into a full philosophical diatribe here, but like that in my personal estimation, I feel like selfishness is much less, I think that selfishness is easier to kind of get away with, or it's much more accepted now. It's the take care of yourself, get your own, you know, go get that bread type of mentality or whatever like that.
You can justify. I know what you're saying. We talked about it before.
You can justify it's easier to justify being selfish or whatever. And I don't like the idea of rebranding selfishness as self-care. I don't like that idea. And I think we should try to get away from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. In the end, it doesn't really matter. To quote a great sage, you try so hard, come so far, that in the end, it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't even matter. R.I.P. So hope everybody like found some useful tips in this episode and in understanding, like I said, empathetic deck building, I think is a useful strategy to make your Commander games more enjoyable, not just for yourself, but for everybody around. And, you know, being invited back to more play groups and everybody being able to walk away from a game and say, wow, that was a really fun game or whatever, and being able to come back later, because I think Commander is, there's so many angles and there's so many variables involved in these games that if everybody at the table isn't invested in making this the most fun game we possibly can, then it's very easy for all four people, or at least three of them, to be miserable for an hour or an hour and a half or 2 hours or whatever it is. And at that point, what are we doing? Yeah. It's a casual format. If we're not playing to have fun, then what are we doing?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so it's a system that exists. It's not even really a system. It's an idea that exists to make your own games better by making everybody else's games better. It is a mutually beneficial idea. And I hope everybody took away some good tips and pointers. I know we didn't talk a lot about specific cards or something like. I mean, mentioned some.
Play Assault Suit.
We did name check a few of them that are like just fun. You know, the Monarch is a thing that you can introduce or whatever. But you know, not one, there isn't one strategy that is always good or always bad. It just depends on the deck and experience that this, it's whatever the experience that deck is trying to have, and whatever experience that you are trying to have in a game, and making sure that you're honest with your own deck's evaluation and honest with how you represent that deck to other people.
Absolutely.
That's all it is. It's a very simple thing. It comes natural to a lot of people. And a lot of people, and you are probably, you listening to this, probably practice a lot of this in your own. But it's just making and taking that extra step to help it out.
If I can put my, summation on your idea, a lot of the time, and I do this probably even today to a degree, and I think most people probably do, when you're building a new commander deck, you're looking up you find your commander, you find the thing you want to do, you look at all the cool ways to do it, and a lot of the time, most times, and I'm not saying anybody's doing this with ill intent or they're trying to be malicious, but you build it of all right, if I do that, if I switch this counter spell out for this one, it's just going to eat, it's a mana less, and it's going to eke up my percentage, and you're really just trying to hone it to be as powerful, a powerful, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's totally fine, but just don't have that be the only thing you're thinking about when you're building a deck of how am I going to fucking power out my guy and smack him, and and again, you're playing a game. That's part of the game. It's part of the fun, but it just doesn't have to always be being cutthroat with your deck building shouldn't be your only priority. Think about
this is obviously excluding bracket 4 and 5.
If you're in 4 and 5, just go. You sickos, you
do what you gotta
perverts,
do.
You go nuts. Just do what you gotta do. But just when you're wanting to have it be fun, and I think it's kind of there's more to it, and it's more than just a coincidence that people who are wanting to have fun and have their deck do the thing, but then when they're building their deck to just be as cutthroat as possible while they're not they're skirting the edges of bracket 4 or whatever, then people get pissy, or people get mad, or feelings get hurt, or the vibe gets off because someone wiped the board 4 times or whatever. It's not a coincidence, you know what I mean? There's there's probably a pretty good correlation between the amount of butthurt feelings versus a lack of empathy with what you're trying to build. I think there's something to it. It's more of an art than a science, I'm sure, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, in the end, you're always tweaking your deck building and your own play patterns to make the games more fun for everybody involved. Mm. If you're the kind of person that takes absolutely no joy in everybody else having a good time as well, talk to a therapist. Man. I don't know.
But I have good news. There's a home for you. There's 2 homes. Bracket 4, bracket 5. That's where you belong.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, if you're that kind of person, go play bracket 4, bracket 5. Then nobody cares.
Exactly.
That's all there is to it. So, hope everybody got some good tips out of this. We will be back again with another episode. I don't know exactly when, because right now our recording schedule is a little wonky with people out of town and Robbie getting ready to have a baby and all this forever. But we're going to try to get back onto recording regular episodes as often as we can. But for Luke and our absent friends, Robbie and Jarrett, I'm Levi. Thanks for listening to this episode of Fair Magic. We will see you guys again next time.